Hey everybody, it's Ron. We're becoming enlightened together. Well, this is the close of yet another week, and although it was like the previous 3 weeks, pretty rough in terms of the energy. And again, it's a little difficult to explain exactly, how this pertains to you specifically because it depends whether you're watching this right this very moment or if you're watching this, 10 years from now. I guess I don't know. Everybody's on a different timeline. Okay. Uh, Again, time is not linear, okay? It appears that way from us. It's like watching a parade go by on the ground, kind of a thing. But in reality, in terms of the multiple dimensions and everything else, from another plane of, if you will, existence and so on, you can see that whole parade simultaneously from above. Like if you were in a helicopter, for example, versus being on the street watching it go by. So and that's a clumsy way of explaining it. I know it's really difficult to explain multiple or not personalities. You could tell I've been dealing with some difficult people with personalities. I'll just leave it at that. But as far as a timeline is concerned, um, this will be different for each and every one of you out there. Okay, and I don't want you to just take my word for it or anything like that. But as you watch this and everything else, just take those things which resonate with you specifically. Whether you feel it in your bones, something hasn't quite happened yet, or maybe these things have already come to pass. But some of these things are evolving in your personal lives as we speak. Behind the scenes, perhaps, but maybe you have a gut feeling of something, and this will give you the clarity, hopefully, that you might need in your particular case. And others, again, this is just confirmation of the things you've already seen, or bits and pieces of things you've already seen and experienced, or things you're dealing with a certain person or personality, and it's been troubling you. And hopefully, this will cover some of that. But today, I think for the first time in a while, everything is positive. I mean, even the obstacles and the challenges is positive. So all the runes today, except for the overall weekly energy, is actually in the upright. So thank God for that. All right, now I use the term God, uh, well, figuratively speaking, because that too is going to represent something different for each and every person out there. Okay. So, and it's hard to define something that defies our understanding from a 3 and even possibility a 4 dimensional perspective on things, as time being the 4th dimension. There are multiple dimensions, again, we can more or less prove, theoretically speaking, there are at least 10 in quantum physics, and there's probably multiple, um, I'll just say there's probably several more than that. In um, And we see that echoed in the dogma of many, many spiritual belief systems. But since we're talking about things that are Norse here, or since we're talking about rooms in terms of divination, they themselves have 9 different worlds. Okay, that the gods travel freely from one to another. Um, and to give you a perspective of what one of them is, for example, have you ever seen things such as Game of Thrones, or have you seen The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, those two actually, sagas. They took a lot from Norse mythology, so to speak. So, but that would be just one world, and there's 8 others that are out there. They call it Middle Earth and everything else. And there's a lot of mythology worldwide in terms of a underground civilization that may exist of super or highly advanced, personages. And I've heard some, really thought-provoking um, topics on that particular subject matter. I've seen a lot of videos on it and things like that, and I see that there is certainly a lot of evidence when you look at the mythologies. Um, like the Native Americans, there are several tribes, for example, that have that exact belief system where they emanated from deep in the earth and everything else after one of the many resets that have occurred in this world. It's not just one. That's happened many times. We see that a lot echoed in not only Hindu, belief, but we also see it echoed in the Western perspective from the Central and South American and as Mexican as well. Um, so Indian, again, basically the whole Western world and Eastern world has fragments that allude to that at very least. And those are the kinds of things that fascinate me. This is why I look at, cultures that, cultures I've never even, had any reason to look at, except out of curiosity's sake. I've been around the world, in my time in the military, so I got familiar with a lot of the cultural, differences and similarities and things of that nature. And although I enjoyed my time in those places, doing things that military guys do typically, I also took time always to go, look around and so on, whether it was with myself or a group of guys, what have you. I mean, we go friggin' hundreds of miles in some cases to explore, you know. And it's been a very, very, I would just say it's been a very positive journey for me. The military wasn't always easy, of course, but it helped me to become more into what I am today and still evolving into. So let's go ahead and get into this. All right. I don't even remember what's got me off on that tangent. Not like I need an excuse. But the overall energy for the week, as I've already stated, is very negative, and it's that of Raidho in reverse. Now, the future for us for today happens to be Raidho in the upright. So, it doesn't happen a lot in these pulls, but it did today. Let's go ahead and look at the downside to close out the week, and the negative energy and everything else that at least some of us had actually been going through currently, and or at least aware of, because a lot of the negative energy we're talking about didn't always reflect that it was specific to the collective, except for their, if you will, association or possibly relation to some karmic individuals, and some of which are really, really going through it. And according to this, even this first rune may not make it out alive, and that's tragic. But I assure you, they have had literally every possible chance, whereas their own um, ancestors have, I mean, they themselves have even given up on them because they just refuse to listen. They just refuse to change. And they are doing or trying to do some heinous things that they've gotten away with in the past. But now, it's time to pay the piper, because they refuse to change and they're still feeling a lot of those, desires. And they still want to go out and do, the damage, the harm, and more to whomever it is that is listening to this, and maybe others around you as well if they can't get to you. If you're listening to this and you're one of the chosen, so to speak, and I use that word loosely, it's already well accepted within spirituality, so I know you've heard it probably, regardless of where you're coming from, and which cultural outlook and so on that you have as a background. But if you are here, you are basically here because you're looking for answers, and you are trying to basically, you're trying to balance out your materialistic life with your spiritual life. And kudos to you, because there are so many in today's world that they don't even acknowledge it, let alone make any efforts to, try to embrace and really discover the richness and the necessity, actually, of balancing, not just your masculine and feminine qualities, but also your materialistic and your spiritual journey as well. And it's the only way to become whole. It's the only way to move forward, basically, and actually learn the secrets to discovering how to get out of this matrix. Now, I'm not saying I have all the answers. I've looked at the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I've looked at many of these books that profess to have not only the secrets, but the way out. And, of course, tying that in with things such as the Gnostic text from the Abrahamic belief systems. along with the typical and more, um, you know, exoteric beliefs, which are basically the typical 5 books of the Bible for that as the Torah for the Judaism, and of course, the 66 traditional books that make up, you know, the King James version of the Bible, if you will. And of course, there's probably another 100 books that they're not even aware of, but they're more or less by fear, they're kept from exploring what may be in those other books. They feel it's blasphemy to look into those things because that's what some people tell them. And as a result, they've missed out so much of what is there that fills in a lot of the gaps. You take that further, for example, and you're going to find, for example, just using one particular aspect that is literally found in every culture, everywhere, and that is the deluge, okay? The most recent reset that we've gone through. Noah's flood, if you will, if you're looking at it from the Western perspective. But if you look at, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and you look at the first 7 books that have been deciphered from the Babylonian manuscripts, or not papyrus, I'm sorry, but the clay tablets that have been, deciphered and everything else, we get a very, very detailed look at where all of these cultures, more or less, probably got, or I should say, they echo, you know, a similar, discussion in terms of the number of people, why and what happened, but with very little detail in comparison to what you're going to find, for example, in the, Epic of Gilgamesh and the other. I can't remember what the actual book is. I'll figure it out and I'll tell you the next time I talk to you. Okay, but I've just forwarded it online, so I'll be more or less better informed, hopefully, here very, very soon on that. But the Babylonian being, or Sumerian, I should say, not Babylonian, but older than that still, the Sumerian tablets is what I was talking about. It's presumably the oldest culture where, out of the blue, from nowhere, they came into play, and basically they were the most highly advanced civilization, where they had entire, you know, uh, like a political system, a legal system, a writing system, all of these things that they did, and their capability of doing very advanced, architectural, uh, you know, just so many things that they were capable of doing thousands and thousands of years ago. And that's by conservative estimates in archaeology. They're not telling us the truth. They don't know the truth about history. I hate to say it, but it's true. Every year we find more and more, discoveries archaeologically that push the time frame back and back and back, and they push the time frame back, but they're liberal about how far back they'll allow that to go because it changes the whole timeline of their history. All right, so if you want any truth in this world, I guess is what I'm really trying to get at, you have to go out and look for it yourself. That's the only way to do it. And again, I always use this particular phrase. There's many others I could use, but since most of the people I'm talking to are probably, Western, um, unless one searches for truth as they would for buried treasure, the same, vigor, the same, I'm going to give up that meal, I'm going to give up that sleep, I'm going to go out there, I don't care. I go out there for weeks and dig and dig and dig and dig. If I know that there's a treasure in this particular area, I'll dig that entire area until I find the damn treasure. I won't, because I'm not as, you know, I don't feel the same way about, if you will, money and so on like that, like most people do. I shouldn't say most, but a lot of people, especially in today's world, we see it echoed everywhere. It's basically, part of the propaganda. Anyways, I'm getting off tangent again. So, what does Raidho mean in reverse? Please excuse me. I'm sorry, guys. There's just so much to say and so little time to actually say that and do a reading at the same time. So, um, In reverse, Raidho talks about an upsetting of plans. So whatever their plans were, they basically fell through. So it could also mean something like unexpected travels and being lost, in fact, someplace. Being in a state of crises, stasis or stagnation, um, being in a state of rigidity, not really moving or being able to, to actually do something that can pull you out of this rut. And maybe you're feeling that there is a sense of injustice in your particular situation. So that's another possibility. Or you're actually, um, or not you specifically, but somebody within your sphere of energetic influence, um, because I presume that you're probably the collective and not so much the karmics, but you're welcome here too if you are, okay? If you're just looking for answers, then this is for you too, and I'll have something here for you. But it also talks about irrationality and disruptions in one's life. It talks about somebody that might be suffering from delusions, somebody who may have lost their job or at the very least has been demoted in some way. And this is where it talks about the possibility of death as well. So, and again, that could mean the death of a cycle, which is inevitable. We know that's going to happen, no matter which side of that line that you're actually on. However, we've gotten many, many other affirmations, throughout the last several months that it looks like it's going to be of a physical death as well. And it may be more than one, but definitely one person. I don't know who it's going to be. It'll be different for each and every one of you out there. So, and we don't want that for anybody, even our enemies. They're just at a different point of their journey for the most part. They're just, if you will, babies in terms of their spiritual growth, and it may take them several lives before they get to a point of, spiritual maturity where they can accept certain truths, or that they'll even be interested in those truths. Until then, they just want to go out there and put their hand in the flame and see what happens, or that fork in that electrical socket, or whatever the case may be, and see what happens. That's kind of what we're dealing with. So if you look at it from that perspective, maybe it's a little easier to forgive them. I have to do that kind of mind trick on myself from time to time too, because, when you had people that have done some really heinous things to you, it's hard, to hear somebody say that it's not personal when it absolutely was for them. But they don't understand the powers that, are involved in all of this, and, the psychology behind it, perhaps. And we don't know all the forces and factors, of course, that they themselves were, going through that led up to this. A lot of them had some very, very, tragic events in their life early on, and they never basically healed from it. And you know how it is: hurt people hurt people. So, with that being said, that's the overall energy that is coming to an end tonight, 12 o'clock. I hope you guys got some of that energy from that full moon last night. It was a little cloudy where I'm at, so I didn't get to see it too much. You can use that, by the way, for basically re-empowering, your runes, your crystals, if you guys do things of that nature, your tarot cards, cleanse them, and all that kind of stuff, and you can power them back up, so to speak, with the use of the moon, full moon, or the sun, even sometimes. Yeah, but you want to protect your divination tools, and they're more than tools. They're actually an extension of myself in some ways. But back to this. I guess I'm a jabberwocky this afternoon. I just want to talk and talk and talk. So I'm doing a lot of reading, but not much talking. So I'm sorry to take it out on you guys. But the past energy for this particular day, Saturday, but it's whatever day you happen to watch it, okay, is that of Canes. And Canes is it's a very powerful rune as well. It's in the first group, family or 8, and it's one that I actually have tattooed on my hand next to Odin's rune, because they complement one another. Now, Canes is basically described as the torch or the flame or the beacon, that light bulb that goes off over your head. So you have a vision, you have a revelation, knowledge, inspiration, creativity, um, positivity, your technical abilities, and your technical knowledge. It also talks about energy and power, vital fire of life, harnessed power, power to create your own reality, strength and power. So there's a lot about power. It talks about also rapport, passion, as well as lust and sexual love. So I hope you guys were getting your share this week. and and that means men and women. Women like it too. And they're becoming more outspoken about that fact. So good on you. I think there should be equality all the way around, and I'm not just saying that to win any prizes or whatever the case may be. I truly believe that, and we find that equality echoed in the Norse culture in particular. I mean, they had women that fought in some cases side by side with the men, the shield maidens, and so on and so forth. And there's plenty of other female warriors out there, Boudica, from the Celtic variety. You have, of course, Joan of Arc, and there are many, many others, by the way. And, I say that for the women folk that are out there and everything else who've been, maybe taken advantage of or maybe beaten down because of misogyny and what's, in my case, sometimes wrongly called toxic masculinity. Masculinity is not toxic. But some of the actions, that especially those of the West, well, I can't say the West, but many cultures, in fact, still practice this, where women are, subservient in many ways. I think that they should work together because they complement each other, like the yin and yang dictates. You can't have one really without the other in some ways, whether it's the feminine qualities that you inhabit as a man in your person that you're supposed to be balancing out to make you a more well-rounded and, if you will, complete human being. We all have that potential. Now, some of us may be born more masculine than others or more feminine than others, and that's fine. It's only a problem when things become, like I said, very imbalanced. So as far as toxicity goes, if a man is completely, I guess you could say, absent of any of the feminine qualities, which, the loving, the nurturing, um, the psychic and intuitive types of things, then they are missing out a great deal of, just what makes life even more enriching. And like matter, if a man is too feminine, for example, then, he's not able to do the protecting, the providing, um, and all the types of things that men do, are supposed to do, the hunting and all that kind of stuff, providing. So, with that being said, seek balance, my friend. All right. So the present energy right now is that of Lagus, since we're talking about divine feminines or feminine and masculine. This is basically what we're talking about here. This is a divine feminine type of energy we're referring to. Now, Lagus refers to water. Now, water is the rivers, lakes, streams, ocean itself. It talks about the flow of those bodies of water. It talks about leaks, stoppages, and things of that nature to the flow of that particular medium. But water is also associated with emotions, especially when we're talking about things like divination, which also has to flow. Or if it becomes stagnant, whenever they have a stagnant body of water, what happens to it? It becomes toxic at time, right? Fetid with bacteria and all manner of things. So it's unhealthy, it's unsafe to partake in, whether you're talking about bathing or whether you're talking about drinking. So same thing with your emotional status. If you don't allow the emotions to flow out, and that means don't keep everything inside of you, find or transmute that energy. If it's presumably negative force, use that energy and transmuted it into something positive. Go out and create something. Go out and have a great workout. There's a multitude of things you can do with that energy, okay, to make it not so bad. But when we're talking about the emotions, we're talking about dreams, we're talking about fantasies, and the mysteries of the unsolved things, the hidden, in other words, the underworld itself. Got it. I haven't talked all day, and now I can't talk at all. So, all right. It talks about not only those things which are hidden, but it also breaks down and works its way to the point of intuitive capability. So intuition, and then finally psychic abilities. Then it talks about the psychic feminine. And there's a lot of connections between the feminine and intuition. We've all heard of a woman or a mother, for example, knowing that her child, who might be thousands of miles away somewhere, becomes harmed or worse, and they instantly feel it. They know it. Somehow, some way, they are connected. Well, that is a feminine quality that basically can be nurtured in everybody, including men. Okay, but it takes an acceptance of the fact, a knowledge of it, and knowledge, of course, is some type of physiology, understanding, a little bit about the pineal gland and things that have been deliberately presented into all of our lives to keep us from fully being able to implement and utilize those, gifts from above, so to speak. So you have to take deliberate matters into your own hands to decalcify your pineal gland and utilize it every day until it becomes not only open, but where you can literally use it at will, the way that it was designed to be used. Okay. All right. So it talks about fertility, talks about fertility sources, the divine feminine, like I said, talks about the healing powers and renewal. That's another feminine attribute or quality. And talks about organic growth and also psychic matters. Okay. So that's the energy right now. Now, as far as our obstacles and challenges, even that is positive, like I said, and that is Gibo. Okay, looks like an X. Again, I thought I always remind you of we are fortunate enough to get that rune because it's a very positive one. It basically is like X marks the spot on a treasure map, which I just happened to talk a little bit about when I did my intro. So, what does it mean? Well, it talks about gifts and gifting. It talks about fortune and generosity. It talks about balance, reciprocity, like I said, giving and receiving. It talks about perhaps sacrificing. Sometimes the giving and the receiving doesn't happen all at one time. Sometimes somebody has to give, or somebody chooses to give and doesn't receive anything until much later on. It's just like a marriage or any relationship. It's not 50-50 all the time. In fact, if you have even a 50-50 soul on once in a while, then you're probably doing better than average a lot of the time. But anyways, that being said, what does it mean? It also means generosity. It means all matters in relation to giving, including that of contracts. So if somebody out there might be signing a contract for something, don't forget to read the small print or have somebody that's qualified to do so do that for you. It talks about personal relationships and partnerships as well. Now, why would that be an obstacle and a challenge? Well, that's going to differ for each and every one of you out there. Maybe reciprocity, maybe balance is something that you need to work on. Maybe something that you haven't really exercised, or maybe you haven't yourself experienced from your partner or significant others in your life. So that's perhaps where that comes in terms of obstacles and challenges. Like I said, this is a very positive reading. Now, our help and advice also is positive instead of Manas and the upright. Now, Manas talks about mankind, humanity, talks about the self, talks about friends, talks about enemies, talks about your perspective on people and theirs about you specifically. It talks about your creativity. So creativity is a big one in today's reading. We're seeing that a lot. It talks about social order, talks about modesty, altruism, in fact. It talks about the divine structure and awareness. We saw that with Legos and the present energy, so that's good because, we're talking about awareness and divine structure. Of course, we're talking about our pineal gland so that we can access, realms beyond the typical, feeling, seeing, smelling, touching, tasting, that kind of a thing. All right, so it also talks about you have aid coming your way. So if you are having a struggle of some kind right now and you're looking and hoping that somebody can come around perhaps and give you a hand with something, whether it's a financial help or it's a physical, release in some way, shape, or form, it's coming. Okay, that's what this is telling us. Now, the future outcome, like I said before, is the same one that started the week in the reverse, but this one is in the upright, and it's Raidho again. Now, Raidho in the upright is the great journey, so to speak. It talks about things that deal with moving forward, and that's like the wheels of a car, the steering wheel. It talks about the wagon or chariot or vehicle of some kind. It talks about traveling as well as journeys. It talks about vacations, relocations, evolution, changes in place or setting, but from a positive perspective, okay? Seeing the larger perspective in something. It talks about taking some form of right action, and it talks about seeing the right move to make and making it. It also talks about the rhythms of life. And again, we've talked about that many times, the highs and the lows that we all experience, good days, bad days, or sometimes, good years and bad years. So that's just life, man. So, I mean, as far as the cadence goes, it's never the same beat or anything like that. It's going to change, quite a bit. So, like I said, we can have a good day, we can have a good hour, we can have a bad, year or whatever. So, with that being said, and I hope that's not you, because I tell you what, going through it myself personally for the last couple of years straight, it's been tough. So, some days I just didn't know if I was going to keep my head above water. There'd be any oxygen when I finally broke that water, get some air. But uh, we're getting there slowly but surely. So, all right. So, like I said, all very positive, to close out this week. And I'm very happy for that because it seems like I get a lot of this less than positive energy that I have to relay to you guys. It's because the people that are watching or tuning in needed to hear that. It's not because of what I want, which is to give you all, rainbows, unicorns, and flowers. I mean, that's what everybody wants to hear, and it makes your day, makes you smile, makes you happy. Makes you puff your chest out, lift your head up, that kind of stuff, or carry that extra, you know, block or whatever, or mile if you're running, whatever the case may be, or lift a little bit more weight. And I know when you hear stuff that is not positive, it has sometimes, if you allow it especially, to have the opposite effect on you. But I have to do what it is that I'm told to do, or at least say what it is that I'm told to say. And I ask specifically every day to give the truth to the collective. I generally do my own readings for myself, and I don't do that every day. Only when I have specific questions and concerns. Okay? Now, for you guys, I try to do it as often as I can, and I can't do it every day. Some days I just have way too much going on, and it just drains me. Okay? So, and this can drain us as well. Anytime you do divination, I mean, you really feel the energy, and sometimes that energy can be very draining. I'll just leave it at that, especially the negative, um, readings. So, being that this one was positive, that's probably why I'm a little bit more perky than usual, because I feel it. And when you're intuitive and empathic, I mean, you really feel it. So you can feel the energy when you walk into a room. You feel the energy when you walk into your house, or even when you're driving in your car. The people that are driving past you, or people that are looking, at you as you're walking by, or in the supermarket, whatever the case may be. You can feel their energy, their aura, whatever the case may be. And I can't actually truly explain it, except our energy field does extend far beyond our person. Um, and they've proven that many, many times, with measuring devices of various sorts and everything else. And your heart emits more electromagnetic energy than even your mind does. So it's crazy, but your gut also produces the same thing. So it's like you have three brains in a way. And you add to that, of course, your sacral energy, your sex chakra. That's where a lot of our creativity and our fire to, to get things done, as well as, so you have all that going on. So if you don't know anything about chakras, you should look into it. I mean, because whether you subscribe to that brand of spirituality or not, there's a lot of good information you could probably glean from it, especially if you're, you enjoy looking at various ways of explaining, life and the various phenomena or whatever that most of us have questions about. And that science is not quite at the point yet where they can answer the questions for all people anyways, successfully, So, I mean, they could, they just choose not to. They deliberately put up a wall between one and the other. You're a charlatan if you talk about it from the spiritual perspective. And of course, the scientific perspective is in a lot of ways very sterile because they can only believe what they can see. And there's a lot of holes in that particular, foundation when you really break it down. So, and far greater people and minds than me have made those comments. That's not just from me. So I'm not claiming to be, anything or brilliant or anything like that at all. But I do read and I'll listen if they're still alive. So any type of archived, documentation from somebody that I might respect from bygone era, So, but I like science. I like philosophy. I like history, even though it's very flawed. But so is science and many other things too. We're just catching up with what had been written for thousands of years in many of these religious texts scattered throughout the world. And once people come to that realization and they stop this friggin' division, which is really causing so many problems in our world, I think that miraculous things are going to start happening for people as a whole. I mean, large groups of people, not just, an individual here and there, but we're going to be able to tap into and understand the power that we all were gifted with and that the elite, so-called, have wanted to, keep you from ever waking up to, because that puts all of their plans in jeopardy. And I say, please let it be so. And I'm doing everything I can to get the word out every day, and even though it's repetitive at times, I hope you're doing the same thing. Be authentic, be who you are, and if you are called to do those types of things, then don't hold back. Let them have it. They deserve it, and they need to hear it. So, so with that being said, as always, I wish you guys the very best. Sorry for such a long reading today. With my segues. Just call me Segway Ron, I guess. So, stay victorious. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Tomorrow starts a brand new week, and I'll do a weekly read tomorrow. And until then, God bless. Take care. Okay.